Welcome to Cactus Crossfire, your go-to for hot takes and prickly debates.
Welcome in, everybody, to Cactus Crossfire. I'm your host, Sisto and Eddie. Happy New Year to everybody. With me, as usual, is our good friend, Eddie. Eddie, where you at?
Happy New Year, Sisto! Hey. I'm actually in Utah today. Really excited to join you. But we're hosted by our good friend, our great producer, our editor, extraordinaire from 8688 Studios, Mr. Gabriel Baca. Mr. Gabriel Baca is such a gentleman. I heard this story. I heard it's true that when he was born, he actually drove his mom home from the hospital. Is that amazing, Sisto?
You know, I wouldn't be surprised about the stuff that Gabe can do. Gabe is pretty amazing. 88 Studios, they've been very welcoming to us this last year and have helped us through this navigating the whole interwebs and helping our producer, Mandy, put together great episodes that everybody has. So looking forward to what we are going to be able to bring to everybody in 2026 with this amazing team. So, Eddie, we've got this episode coming up today. We're going to be talking about a lot of interesting things. It seems like the universe and the world is focused in right now on our friends in Minnesota.
Land of 10,000 lakes.
10,000 lakes. It seems like there's a lot happening in Minnesota. Ice shootings, Somali daycare controversy. And then we're going to jump in a little bit into some of the stuff in regards to Iran and the protests that are happening around Iran and U.S. policy and nuclear tensions about that. We're going to talk about the recent...
Only going to hear it, Sisto, because no one else is talking about Iran.
Well, and
the
then
media isn't even talking. You can't find it anywhere. But you got to come to the Cactus Crossfire to hear about Iran.
We're gonna hit up a little bit on the recent seizure of the president of Venezuela and what's happening down in Venezuela.
I like to call him the commander-in-chief drug dealing.
Yeah, Venezuela. Well, I mean that's where the rubber hits the road on today's conversation about that. Yeah. And then something that's near and dear to Eddie's heart, and I think it's only because he's growing out his beard now, is this rugged individualism or the warmth of, and he's wearing this hot red jacket today, so that might be getting into the warmth of collectivism. So we'll be touching on some of those subjects today. But let's start it.
This jacket is for my comrade Mamdani.
Your comrade Mamdani. There you go.
Mamdani, right there.
I think that we want to kind of start things off with kind of what's been happening in Minneapolis, the information that we're getting right now as of the filming of this podcast about the ice shooting that's happened down in Minnesota, in Minneapolis.
Yeah,
Your
that
thoughts,
was crazy.
Eddie?
I mean, I watched the video. I've watched it multiple different angles. Interested your thoughts, but I mean, like, this stuff is sad, Sisto. I don't understand why people make decisions the way they do. My phone's been blowing up all day. I'm hearing it from my friends on the left, my friends on the right. Both sides seem to have it figured out, Sisto. They seem to totally got it right. My damn progressives are like 100% that ICE officer was in the wrong, and then all my friends on the right, they're all like, what's wrong with her? Why would she drive off at a police officer, right? Like, there's these very distinct lines that are drawn. You look at what's happening online, and you look at the conversation that's occurring across the country. It's getting pretty aggressive. I mean, people are legitimately not even looking into the middle. And for me, I mean, I'm interested in your thoughts, but I can't imagine. Looks like two people made mistakes in this scenario. I mean, this happens all the time, right?
I mean, I'm not too sure about two people making mistakes on this one. I think that the what we're seeing pretty much in my mind is pretty clear. Renee Good was trying to box in ICE agents as they were conducting a operation, along with a number of other protesters that were there in Minneapolis, which she, is totally within her right. But at the same time, when she tries to move out of the way, you see one ICE agent draw for his weapon and take Renee down. And it is a takedown. It's an absolute takedown. I think any cop that we know would call it a takedown. I've actually been in that position where I have seen an officer, point his weapon at a vehicle, but he did not shoot, thank God. And I think that in this case, there's a lot of concern swirling around whether or not, one, are these ICE agents who were given $50,000 bonuses, are they trained? in how to handle these types of situations? Have they learned do they have the proper training for de-escalation? Do they have the proper training for making a judgment call in making a shot happen? And what other avenues could have happened? So there's a lot of stuff swirling around this, but the most interesting part about this is that, and I think the narrative that we're going to start seeing in both sides of the spectrum and that people need to be very aware of is this is a different type of shooting, because in other shootings where we've seen this type of situation happen with between law enforcement and a citizen, they're never not a minority. This is the first time that we've heard about a white woman getting shot by ICE or any type of law enforcement.
A triple dub, as I like to refer them.
Yeah.
You know,
And-
not
and
just
so-
a white woman, but a woke white woman.
Yeah.
Getting
And-
shot. But I mean, see, so like you characterized it. I mean, I wasn't there. I don't know what happened. I mean, we're going to get these reports coming out. I want to reserve a lot of judgment until we get the full array. You and I have worked with law enforcement across the country. We know the very dangerous situations that they're in. And for the life of me, I don't understand why people make decisions the way they do, right? If you have law enforcement in front of you, you are required to abide and listen to the orders that are being delivered to you. Otherwise, you are resisting arrest or putting law enforcement's life in danger. We didn't know what was going on in that situation. We didn't know where she was driving. We didn't know what was in front or behind those law enforcement officers. Whether or not you agree with what they're doing in Minneapolis, as a citizen, you have a duty to try to respect the law and order of the area, the region, the country that you're in. That's my take. I mean,
and I'm glad that you're bringing that up, because the very interesting point about this is that you have to follow the laws of the state of which you are in. Okay. And the problem in this instance is this is not local law enforcement, Eddie. There's a different set of rules for ICE. I hate to tell you.
That's a U.S. marshaled law enforcement officer.
They're not marshaled though, Eddie. They're not marshaled. This is the interesting part about ICE. People need to understand the powers that ICE has. Okay, ICE does every law enforcement entity that operates within the borders of any state has to sign a memorandum of understanding with local law enforcement, a memorandum of understanding with the state police, so that they understand what the operations are. What has the problem been with ICE is they're just being willy-nilly deployed into areas outside of their jurisdiction, okay? ICE's job is to be handling the border. Now, I'm sure that Minneapolis is not that close to the Canadian border, but, you know, what were they doing in that community? Well, it's a part of our other story here, Eddie.
I know we're going to move on, and you're right. They're not a marshal. They're not a federal marshal, but they are federal law.
They are federal law enforcement, but
anytime. Again, I'm sad. I'm sad that woman that was shot in the Capitol riots, 6 years ago, you know, she broke into the Senate. She got shot. What the hell? What are you doing? You know what? I mean, I think some of these people might have some mental illness that disturbs them in taking very risky actions. But I don't know why they made those decisions. It doesn't make sense to me.
Well, you know, and Eddie, you and I are going to agree to disagree. I think that there's a very distinct difference between the woman at the January 6th situation versus the woman in this car. I think that you have two situations where you had somebody actively pushing their way into a federal building that was in a violent takeover, versus a driver who was pulling not onto the sidewalk, was in traffic, nowhere in the vicinity of the officer, giving him any type of threat. We're going to agree. We're going to agree to disagree on that one. I think that Renee Good. I think that Renee Good was a woman who had very strong beliefs. But do I see any instance of mental anguish on her behalf? None. And so
I'm sad for the loss of life.
I'm extremely sickened by the same with you in regards to the loss of life. But I hope that my hope is in all of this is that the Minnesota Attorney General does what they would normally do with local law enforcement, which is launch an investigation into whether it was or was not a justified shooting, And if it wasn't, then this ICE officer needs to stop hiding behind his federal immunity and face charges at a local level, going to your point about abiding by the law. And I think that a lot of
Yeah.
people need
I
to
mean,
start taking that on and start looking at it. But that's not the only thing that's happening in Minnesota. You know, in
let me start off,
Minnesota,
like, Minnesota be crazy for one thing, because I mean, let's go back, what, almost 6 years, and the infamous George Floyd happened in Minnesota, right?
yeah,
We are constantly having things now. This situation is not even similar to that. I think advocates have some justifiable debate around the George Floyd incident, and a person who was first perhaps resisting arrest, but then submitted and needed some medical attention. This situation, is different, but something is wrong in Minnesota. Something is
yeah.
wrong in Minneapolis. And let's talk about what's going on in the great industry of watching children in the state of 10,000 Somali
Yeah.
daycares.
Yeah. I mean,
What's going on there, Sisto?
we've seen, there's been reports or actually follow ups and investigations starting to happen into the status of not Somali childcare, but daycare centers in Minnesota.
Yes.
Now, this has all happened because there was a viral video that posted that we won't show here, but
Everyone's
that
seen it. They don't need to
that
see it on here.
that claims that there was some funny business happening with Somali daycare. That these Somali daycares were popping up in Minnesota. They were receiving funding from the state, and whether or not they were actually doing what they said they were doing is up for debate. So this is where we're at with it. It's still kind of a cause for the mayor of or the governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, to announce that he would not be seeking re-election after this election. He did note that there were some problems and that there may be some violations, but that he's going to take responsibility for whatever they are, and he's going to fix it before he leaves office. So, what are your thoughts on all this, Eddie?
Well, I mean, like, I watched the video, I watched follow-up videos, I watched all of the daycare owners coming out and giving their press conferences. I mean, I'm not quite sure what public relations industry they paid for the advice on some of that, which frankly did not help their cause in any account. But let's start with the concept of fraud. I mean, Sisto, it was almost 4 years ago, or I guess 3 years ago, in the state of Arizona, that they found $2.5 billion in the Attorney General Mays found $2.5 billion in Medicaid fraud at the state level for Indian health services, for addiction recovery for Native American populations throughout the state, for senior care, for any other sort of care facility, ones where there were daycares there too. Fraud is something that is replete through our systems of government across county, city, state, and federal. So we know that happened. I think the assumption that more than likely fraud occurred is probably a wise assumption. And people that are burying their heads in the ground saying, oh, these are reputable businesses, they didn't abuse the taxpayer dollars that were coming to them for their services, I think, it creates a little bit of naivety on the way government works. Again, the state of Arizona, a couple of years ago, they're still weeding through it. But we're talking about $2.5 billion in fraud in that state alone. So let's fast forward to this past Christmas. Some young YouTube stud who's out there videotaping and trying to make a name for himself, Nick Shirley, gets out there, and lo and behold, in my opinion, what does he capture? He captures a failure by the state of Minnesota in credentialing and licensing these facilities that are absolute jokes. You don't even see the record, Sisto. Look at the actual buildings. In any other state, especially in the West Coast, there are requirements to hold a child. We're talking about children, one of the most populations that are protected by multiple laws. The way that these buildings look, there's not a single window in the Leering Center, the infamous Leering Center, right, with the misspelling and all that stuff. Now it's closed down, whatever. There's not a single window. Goes to the outside to show what's going on. That's a huge violation, right? Daycares are all about transparency. We're trying to protect children from abuse, which has happened many times before in daycares. And here, the thing that I don't see a lot of people talking about is the fact that these facilities were even licensed in the first place. Like, you know what, Tim Walz, Governor Walz, you need to be held responsible for the fact that your administration licensed, out of the 100, they're saying 81 possible facilities that should never have been licensed in the first place. And now they're looking at the financial record, which, according to the most recent discovery that came from the Joint Task Force, there's like 81 possible, individuals that they're going to cite for fraud. I mean, this is a real issue, Sisto. And
well, I mean, it's an issue, but it's a broader issue. Okay. I mean, Eddie, you're bringing up the Arizona Medicaid fraud. Let's not get that confused with this. This is not Medicaid dollars that were being used in this situation. In this situation, where they're finding the fraud actually is in COVID dollars. Okay. The places where they're finding the fraud existed in stuff that happened in 2020. Okay. These Medicaid these COVID dollars were being used not to handle childcare. It wasn't to manage childcare. Has nothing to do with childcare. Had everything to do with delivering food to the most vulnerable individuals in these cities. That's where they're claiming the fraud happened. Okay, not childcare. So the licensure part, all of that other part of this doesn't apply to the argument about fraud because it had nothing to do with the fraud. Okay. As a matter of fact, these children weren't even in the facilities in 2020 where they found the fraud. Okay. And so the separate issue then becomes is, okay, so back to your point of that that these facilities didn't meet criteria of who? Criteria of the state of Minnesota? And I hate to tell you, Eddie, in these areas where these 81 out of the over 3,000 childcare centers in the entire state of Minnesota, these are 81 facilities that are in communities that have childcare deserts. These are childcare centers that are in areas that were underserved by the community at large. And when you look at the disparity between childcare facilities that are in communities of color and communities of economic disadvantage, I hate to tell you, Eddie, there's not a lot of places for people to build a building. And the facilities and the individual that's in the video that Nick Shirley found, why did he start looking at this facility? Because it was in his building, in a building that he shared office space with. It was a shared office building. And supposedly, when you watch the video, he's out there saying, oh, I got all this information from insiders within the Capitol and everything else. If you're drawing down all of these conclusions, how come this individual never went to the Attorney General, never went to local law enforcement, never went to the Department of Education, only until Nick Shirley shows up and says, gotcha.
I think you have a point, Sisto, but I don't want to sweep under the rug the dust of frankly, violation and
But violation where, Eddie? Violation of what?
Are we talking about
violation?
None of those building videos should have ever been licensed. They do not
Eddie,
qualify underneath the standards and care for child care facilities.
But what is the standard of care? So where does the standard of care come from? And
it's at the state. The state licenses every single one of these facilities.
And I hate to tell you, Eddie, they make exceptions to the licensures. They do it here in New Mexico. They do it in Arizona. And you're talking about
are we treating our children based on minority status with substandard care based on minority status?
I'm saying that that's always happened. Even in New Mexico, we already know.
We shouldn't accept it.
Well,
we shouldn't accept it.
I understand that, Eddie, but guess what? It's in the communities that no one cares about. Bottom line, they don't care about little brown kids and little black kids as much as everybody wants to make that the issue. Because let me tell you, right now in regards to childcare in our country, have we risen to the level that there is a national movement for standardized childcare across the country? There's not. Just like there's not. And even this administration, this Trump administration, has done everything in its power to dismantle any type of educational system that is standardized. And here we're going to go down the road and we're going to talk about, this is the standard of care. Standard according to who? Because I'll tell you.
Listen, there is national guidelines, best practices around daycare centers, around
it's best practices.
Senior centers, around vulnerable populations.
This
goes all the way back to many laws that have been passed.
It does, but Eddie, you and I know that state by state, it diverges. And when you're talking about these communities, these communities of poor immigrant communities, they make exceptions to the rule.
Who?
And
The
it's
state
only because
or
the
the
state
immigrant
does.
communities?
The state does. And the communities don't know any better. I hate to tell you, the communities, the ones that do, I will tell you my child care experience, okay? I live in downtown Albuquerque. Downtown Albuquerque, from where my house is to at least a mile down the road, there are 8 child care facilities between those two spaces. And in those two spaces, all of them, Eddie, are in buildings similar to the ones that we saw in Minnesota. Now, I drive up here to the Northeast Heights of Albuquerque, and let me tell you what their childcare facilities look like. Huge playgrounds in front, large open windows, all these extra spaces. So is the level of childcare the same for all communities? No, it's not. No, it's not.
But I think that's sort of proven the point, Sisto, and I agree with you. It's not. It's not being equally applied to communities, and there's exemptions made based on skin color and social economic status. And that to me is the failure of government. That to me is the bureaucrats that have allowed for this to happen and are lazy in their application of licensure. You know what? Listen, Tim Waltz, I liked him. Nice guy. He wasn't my favorite pick for the VP for the Harris campaign. There's a lot of concerns. Everyone says, oh, nice guy. At some point, the bureaucrats that run that agency, their responsibility is the protection of the public, protection of children, not just public, but we're talking about the most vulnerable population, kids, little kids who cannot defend themselves, that are being placed in a situation outside the care of their parents. They need bureaucrats to be vigilant in ensuring that the places that they are going are safe, are secure, are with people that are background checked and are trained to do appropriate childcare. I mean, these are really important factors that need to happen to protect our children.
And when we're talking about the broader scale of all of this, we're talking about 81 child care centers in regards to over 3,000 centers across the state of Minnesota. I hate to tell folks, but that's probably within the margin of an acceptable error, and it's going to happen regardless of where you're at.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily
should it be allowed? Should it be right?
No,
it shouldn't. But guess what?
No, it shouldn't.
There's a lot of errors, and you and I both know it.
This is what drives me crazy about my Democratic fellows legislators. When there's a criticism, it is an automatic defense instead of, hey, holy hell, let's use this as an opportunity to fix what's right. Let's use this to create and fix the inequities in minority communities and immigrant communities and low economic status communities and fix what was wrong. But instead, there's this double down of defensiveness. And in the reality, as Democrats, to invest in these programs.
And you and I are talking around the edges of this story. This story is about fraud, and you've brought it up. But the fraud does not exist in the areas that people are that the media is talking about. It exists in the area of COVID money. And why is the president so pissed off? Because he thinks he sees it's Somalian childcare centers. No, Mr. President, hate to tell you, those subsidies that happened during COVID, your watch, homie, your watch.
Well, and that goes back to the PPP fraud,
yes,
the testing fraud,
yes,
the failed tests.
Yes.
I mean, listen, fraud is replete. We know it is. And honestly, we're not here defending Trump. Trust me, like this, there is no defense of the administration. Those individuals in the Department of Health who allowed those fraudulent actions to happen underneath their watch with the COVID dollars, all of our taxpayer dollars, need to be held accountable. This also opened up the door where I'm watching these videos and I'm like, why is no one talking about the substandard care for children in Minneapolis? That needs to be changed.
But it's
and if that's happening in our Western states, I'm telling you 100% that stuff doesn't happen in Nevada. The work we do in Nevada, because I used to work in that agency that oversaw what was called AAA care. You could not get a daycare status without reaching these very, very stringent requirements in the state of Nevada. And I think every state needs to apply that.
So, Mr. Secretary?
Yes. All right. I'll pick up the phone.
Pick up the phone.
I'm ready to take on that mission. Let's go.
So get me the number out of Nevada of those AAA care facilities that exist in communities of economic disadvantage and economic color and of color. Because I guarantee you, Mr. Secretary, that at the end of the day, when I go down there and I look into it in the poorest areas of Nevada, which I mean are very few and far between, let's make that clear as well.
We have poor areas in Nevada.
You do.
Absolutely.
You do.
Absolutely.
But when I start looking for those facilities in those areas, not going to find many of them. Guarantee you. Because I will guarantee you, in New Mexico, we have expanded early childhood education in New Mexico. That is why there are 5 locations between my house and a mile down the road. Because we have tried to encapsulate all of our most vulnerable children. That's where we started first. Now the governor has expanded early childhood education to everyone, regardless of your economic status. Well, let me paint a picture for you, Eddie. All of a sudden, where those more affluent kids are, and you had those lower income students they're getting notifications that we're not going to be able to service your kid anymore because we have to service the kids in this area first.
Well, and you hit the nail on the head on some other things that happen out here in the West, right? What are some of the things that we do? The West Coast, we invest in multiple modes of education. We might not spend the most in education. We might not have the best, highest per pupil spending. But if you look in our West Coast states, Nevada, New Mexico, Arizona, California, right? Utah, Idaho, where public government, public county schools are not fully built or not fully, spread out, you're seeing the fill by public charter schools that are taking over those roles. And the reason I'm bringing this up, Sisto, is both county schools and public charter schools in the West are tapping into preschool daycare and after-school daycare dollars, that they're building facilities on those sites. I was looking into some of the things happening in Minnesota. They don't fully play that out. So one of the values you have for kids across our states is that those things are built into the education system. And many of these other Midwest states have neglected that.
In regards to early childhood education, we're starting to move in that direction. We're starting to move in that direction of public-private partnerships, because most of the child care providers in New Mexico aren't affiliated with local school districts. They're independent contractors. They're private businesses. Now,
that
what
the
has
district
happened
brings into the district, right?
No, the district doesn't even. The district has very few child care centers that they have under their.
No, but they're contracting with these vendors to bring them in and provide
most
those
of the
cares.
times in most public schools in New Mexico, they're only working with not-for-profits. They're not working with private vendors, and that's
like Boys and Girls Club.
Boys and Girls Club,
right?
A lot of different folks. But in that, though, the problem that we're starting to face is they don't have capacity. They don't have resources. The not-for-profit machine cannot keep up with the sheer volume. So now you have to go into the private sector. What's happening there is we're starting to get pushback from the teachers union saying we don't want more private dollars, more public dollars going to private entities.
Enter stage left. Here comes the bane of my existence, the teachers union.
So I mean,
once again, ruining policy.
So we have an abundance of issues surrounding childcare in all of our states. I think that this issue that's happened, I think that exposing any type of fraud is important, but let's make sure we're exposing the fraud where it exists and not creating a narrative because some cranky neighbor is not on my lawn. Okay. I mean,
good point. I think that's a good place to start. I agree with you. I think let's call fraud for what it is. Let's call it out for where it is. And everyone who's involved in those fraudulent schemes should be held accountable, whether they're Somalian immigrants or bureaucrats underneath the Trump administration. Mr. Khomeini.
What was that?
Mr. Ayatollah Khomeini.
You want to talk about the Ayatollah Khomeini? You want to talk about the fall of Iran yet again on the soon to be anniversary of the very last fall of Iran. So Eddie,
what was that?
During the 1970s.
When was that? I didn't know that's coming up.
Oh yeah. 1979 was when the Shah of Iran was overthrown by the people in Iran, and the Ayatollah Khomeini was able to come back. And then there shortly after, during that time, you had the hostage situation that happened in 1979 with the American citizens who were there, and just happened to be a presidential election year. Our good friend and one of our heroes, Jimmy Carter. A lot of folks will say that was the reason that Jimmy Carter lost the election was because of the Iran hostage situation. and they had a strong Republican president who came in and said he was going to get them back. And the day that he was sworn in, they were released. And there was a lot of money going to the Iranians from the Contras, and we had a situation
Yes,
after
there
that.
was.
So,
Yes, there was.
what makes this new Iranian protest situation different than what it was in the 1970s?
Well, I think what's apparent to me, and what I think is I think shocking, is if you go to CNN, you go to Fox News, you go to NBC, you go to all the network stations, you go to Daily Beast, you go to Vox, you go to all the ragger out there, you go to Al Jazeera, right? The quote unquote Middle East reporting news site. What will you find? Zero. Big old zero. You're not going to see anything about what's happening in Iran. Why? Why are these outlets not talking about the uprising from people who are sick of Islamic rule, of Sharia law that has governed this country for over 26 years, and that they're finally saying enough is enough. We do not want Sharia law in our country. They're one of 5 countries in the world that is governed underneath Sharia law, that came from a truly capitalistic society that was flourishing underneath the Shahs, into a situation where it is now very repressive. I mean, I think it is fair to say, I think that is a politically PC comment to make. The Islamic Republic of Iran is a repressive government that represses women, that represses minorities, that represses gay, lesbian, transsexual, transgender, bisexual individuals, that represses anyone who is not part of that majority group. And here the people are uprising and overthrowing the Ayatollah. And I think that's fantastic. I think this needs to be celebrated. I think everyone across the world needs to support the people of Iran to overthrow this repressive government. But why don't we see it? Why don't we see it in the news outlet? Go to any of them. You're not seeing anything. You're talking about the last time I saw something was on Al Jazeera. It goes down and it references Gaza and Iran. It ties it back again to this anti-Israeli, anti-Semitic narrative that Al Jazeera always does, and it ties those two together. But it drives me crazy. Like, where are the No King protesters in the streets? Sisto, we had this whole No Kings protest in every massive city in the country. Where are all those people? They want King Ayatollah, apparently. They do want kings.
I don't know about that, Eddie. I mean, I think that's, I think that, come on. I mean, be realistic, brother. I mean, that's not the case. That's not why the No Kings are showing up. And it's not the fact that they're not paying attention. Okay. Because
Okay.
I will push back, and I will say that today I did a little bit of research, because quite frankly, I probably have a closer connection to this situation than most, because when the Shah did fall, he did take some of his closest allies and dispatch them to the United States with money in their pockets to create businesses that would help him and his family when they were thrown out of power. Okay. And I mean, you want to talk about repressive versus the Shah versus and them being much more capitalistic. The Shah of Iran was not that much more capitalistic. He was just much more willing to deal with the United States capitalism that was going to exist within his country. Okay. He was willing to take a little bit of money, much like in our next segment that we're going to talk about, our friends in Venezuela did. Okay, that's true across the board. Any type of authoritarian regime that has happened, they are very willing to take U.S. dollars so that they can benefit as well from when the U.S. does as well. And I think that in this case, in regards to what's happening with what's happening in Iran, I will tell you, during the 70s and 80s, there was a flood of Iranians who came to New Mexico. Why? The climate is the same. The climate is the same. The territories are the same, and they have a very strong agricultural background. Okay, so they were able to go into communities and establish. I mean, one of my best friends growing up, they owned a dairy farm just miles away from my house. And during that whole entire time, they used to love to tell people how they were Iraqi, not Iranians, okay? Because of the situation that was happening in Iran.
Yeah.
Later on, as we got to know them and understand them. I'm walking around through their house and I'm noticing these pictures of their dad on the wall with the Shah of Iran. Okay, and so they dispatch these folks into these states, and eventually the Shah passes away. Unfortunately, during that entire occupation time, these families were not going to get the financial investment that they were going to continue to get from the Iranian countries that they thought they were. So they had to make it on their own, and they flourished, and they were very productive and influential individuals in our community. But the interesting part about what you're bringing up about these protests is we've actually had them protesting in New Mexico. They've
really good.
Yeah. I mean, those same people that you're talking about
in support of the Iranian overthrow?
and what they're talking about is whether or not U.S. intervention is going to start happening in Iran in a similar fashion that it's happened in Venezuela. That's probably within the last 48 hours.
Protests do not want intervention or do?
Well, they don't want intervention because what they're afraid of is what's happening in Venezuela. And, the interesting part about these two situations and in these two international stories is that folks are not getting a full picture of what's going on the ground. And we have to be mindful of that fact when we're bringing these issues to the forefront, because at the end of the day, the Iranian standoff that's happening, they still haven't really, the Shah, the Ayatollah is asking for asylum of his buddy countries right now, okay? He's asking Russia to take him in. Russia has not said yes yet. Why?
No, but isn't that a huge red flag, Sisto, to our foreign policy?
Well, it's a huge red flag to our foreign policy. But at the same time, right now, this president is caught in a big crossfire with his own foreign policy initiatives that he executed with military force just a few weeks ago. And he doesn't have a plan for Iran. The Secretary of State, you're right. Why isn't this, you want to know why is nobody talking about Iran? Because the president's not talking about Iran. The Secretary of State's not talking about Iran. The State Department's not talking about Iran. Because they want to sit back, because there's another authoritarian regime that has Sharia law that's very close to Iran, that we don't seem to have a problem. We don't seem to have a problem. Well, I mean, we don't seem to have a problem with those guys. No. We're not asking them to, hey, you guys need a, and I guarantee you I'm guaranteeing you what's going to happen, Eddie. I'll guarantee you what's going to happen. They're going to wait for the Saudis to make a phone call and say, yep, we're right. Let's go. And when that happens,
I think this is one of those things, Sisto, that we need to be here at Cactus Crossfire, right? We're getting a lot of feedback from some great listeners. Appreciate all the content. A lot of it is, what can we trust? And, before I really got into the Iranian uprising that's happening, you're looking at social media, you're looking at videos, and everyone's thinking the same thing, right? This must be AI. This must be made up. Well, really? I mean, the first videos that come out, Sisto, the first videos, when they're coming out, you don't know what's going on, right? Because the world was duped over what happened in Gaza with all the AI videos that came out of Al Jazeera and Hamas. And now
you and I
we're
need
seeing
to talk
these other
about your
videos
algorithm.
coming out.
Lord have mercy. Huh? We need to talk about your algorithm, brother. But
this stuff is popping. And so I'm saying I don't trust videos ever. I think the American public should never trust videos. Everyone should have a resting heartbeat that it might be AI, right? Except for you and me.
Yeah, okay,
we're not AI.
Trust us. We're not AI.
Everyone should trust, or should verify what they're getting. And so I dug deep as well. And I think the frustrating thing is that true journalism coming out of the Middle East is not actually occurring. It's coming from within Iran. We're hearing it from citizen journalists that are giving this information out. There's been people that have been killed by the Khomeini government, right? And you're right. He's trying to find a solution. Trump and his team are trying to figure something out. I don't think anyone has a plan. This is what happens in revolution, right? Like, we see this all the time. To me, why I think it's a big deal is because in 1979, right, when the Shahs were there, you had a strong Persian nation where Islam was not the law of the land. It was not constitutionally driving the actions of the people. It is a secular government. And now fast forward 27 years with repressive control of theocratic government underneath the very extreme Islamic rule, to me, this is a huge opportunity for the world to embrace conversations around theocratic, governing rule in some of these very dangerous portions of the regions of the world. And I think this is great. I think nothing could be better than embracing a capitalistic system, embracing democracy, embracing a secular form of government. Individuals can freely operate without their hijabs, right? I think that's an important piece to this. You're seeing it. Women are expressing their freedom in the Middle East. And I think that's a great thing, Sisto.
Yeah. Well, I mean, neither you nor I will solve the problems in Iran, but to a more closer point, our good friend, our comadre, our compadre, our primo hermano, President Maduro was brought to the United States and captured by the Trump administration, brought in, and Trump is out there claiming temporary control until elections of the international domestic. Where are we headed with all this, Eddie? Where do you think we're going?
I see it. It will be Trumpizuela before we know it. You're going to have a new country, Sisto. Trumpizuela. Let's go. Viva Trumpizuela. Come on.
Viva
Embrace
Trumpizuela.
it. That's
No,
what's going to happen.
I thought it was simply going to be more hotels along Caracas that say Trump on it.
Maybe.
Yeah. So there you go.
The big golden Trump hotels.
Yeah.
I don't know. Listen, I mean, come on. I mean, of course it's about oil. Of course is it any shock that you had the Chinese leaders and the Russian leaders in Caracas the day before or the day of Sisto meeting with Maduro? And then here comes the US government and says, oh, hell no, we're going to take this dude out. We are not allowing huge hegemonic, Eastern Hemisphere forces to come into our hemisphere and create rule. Like, I mean, listen,
the hardest part is that, yeah, it's about oil. So what type of oil is this about? Okay.
It's about clean, good oil, apparently.
No. This is what they call dirty oil, right? This is the worst. This is the worst kind of oil you can get. It's not sweet crude like we have in the Permian Basin. Okay.
Is that the Sean Puffy Combs oil?
It is. Yeah, I don't know if it's the Sean Puffy Combs version of oil. I haven't heard that he's been to Caracas. Haven't seen anybody that he was with in Caracas. But I will call 50 Cent after this to find out if he knows. But at the end of the day, what we have here is, so as the filming of this episode, there are 10 oil tankers on their way to Venezuela to pick up our oil. The administration is saying that we're going to take all this oil and we're going to hold it for them and we're going to protect it for them until they establish their own way of they can govern themselves. And then we will tell them how if they come to us and say, this is what we want to spend the money on, we'll say, great. No, go back to the drawing board. I'm not sure if that's going to work for a lot of people for a long time, but also the administration is telling the oil and gas industry in the United States. Yeah. The president loves to say, oh, oil and gas companies are going to go down to Caracas. They're going to go down to Venezuela. They're going to start pumping and drilling and doing everything else, and they're going to rebuild the infrastructure that's needed around those industries, and they're going to lead the way. But then you talk to the oil and gas industry out of the Permian Basin, and they're saying, we're not too sure about that because we've been down there before. Because when Hugo Chavez was the dictator, they were down there and they thought they had a great working relationship with him. Until he decided, well, wait a minute, I got enough people here that I could just nationalize it myself and keep these bucks for myself. So that's where the theft that the president talks about occurred during Hugo Chavez's reign. Now,
Maduro was his deputy.
Well, Maduro was his deputy, but at the same time,
they're all the same.
It's all the same. But even now, so what are the challenges that we're going to be facing in the Southwest because of this? Well, New Mexico, okay, it's $6 billion of is it 6 or 13? I'm not sure. It's billions of dollars of oil that they're going down to get, that they're going to bring back to the United States to refine and to flood the oil markets. Has the president been promising people a lot of stuff in regards to their gas prices? Did he not make a commitment that he was going to make gas prices drop down to $1.25 by June and July? How do you do that? You got to go get more oil and flood the market. Now,
Well, and let's also talk about personality and his desire for favorability in the polls.
well, and that's
Let's
great.
talk about the fact that Democrats through the Christmas break, right, through the transition, you had these bumps occurring. You had defection. Your girlfriend Marjorie Trader Greene, left the party, left Congress. You had all these defections happening. You had the Epstein files release. His polling numbers continue to go down. Republicans are dragged down because of that. So what does Trump do? He executes a strike and extracts a leader. Some people even question whether or not he is viably democratically elected. Probably not, right? And is now prosecuting him for drug charges.
Well,
and we all sort of agree, yes. I mean, the Biden administration want to do this. Everyone want to do it. No one likes Maduro.
Well,
now the concern is what happens
well,
next. But let's be very clear. Oil, campaign promises, polls, ratings, favorability.
But this is the problem that he has with it's not just my girlfriend Marjorie Taylor Greene that's bumping up against him. Today, 5 Republican U.S. senators joined the Democrats in the U.S. Senate to sponsor a resolution saying no more action in Venezuela until you come and get congressional approval. 5.
I mean, it's a flex. I know.
It's a flex. But guess what? This has real implications for the Southwest, Eddie, because in New Mexico, we're an oil and gas state.
Yep.
Our projections next year for revenue in the state of New Mexico are based on a $60 a barrel price. Guess what prices fell to today? 55. First of the year. If gas prices go down in New Mexico below $1, below $2.15, we're going to have a deficit in our state, a huge deficit, which is then going to
Senator Ben Ray, Senator Martin, they got to get on it.
And so at the end of the day, is President Trump helping the West? No, not at all. Because as much as we were talking about our friends in Iran and our princely friends too, where do they spend their vacation sometime, Eddie? In the great state of Nevada.
Well, they're giving their money.
Yeah, and they give it to your hospitality and your hotel industry. Quote unquote,
we are very hospitable states.
Yes, you are.
But Sisto, let's go back. I mean, I still think political science. Let's just sit back for a second. We're taking off our Democrat hats, right? From an optics perspective, this was genius. Do you agree? From an optics, his polling in November 15, I'm looking at the Hill report, was upside down. He was upside down after the elections that happened. And today, his favorability is 5 points up above unfavorable.
I mean, he went up 5 points in 3 days. That ain't we want to take the political science hat off. Then you and I both know those are soft numbers. And now with the defection of his own party, a defection of 5 Republicans, which he is now decrying that they've never been a real Republican and we got to get rid of them now. Guess what's going to happen? 2 revolutions are about to happen, okay? The white females are going to start having a big old hissy fit, and his own Republican Party is starting to have a hissy fit. Does that sound like a coalition being made in heaven in November? Maybe. Or this next November? Maybe. But we've got a long ways.
It's a long ways away. But I think my concern, right, is oftentimes, we become so tribalistic, right?
Yeah.
It's Democrats, we haven't talked about this, but let's back up. One of our past episodes, right? I was very critical of shutting down the government because of subsidies for Affordable Care Act. Well, guess what? They got it. This is great. They didn't need to shut down government. My criticism was always about their tactic, right? But thank goodness that the people who are desperately relying on these subsidies are coming through. This is fantastic. But we should be able to get out of our tribalistic ideas and say, good job, Senate Democrats, for doing that. Good job, Trump, for getting rid of, the world's greatest drug dealer and stopping the opioids from coming into our country. Let's hope that happens. Maybe it helps with oil prices. I hate when we get into our isolated world and we become so tribalistic that no matter what, doesn't matter. Trump can cure cancer. he's still Trump. He's an a-hole and we hate him.
Well, but
right?
I don't think in this case though that tribalism is existing. I think in these two instances that we're talking about today, people are starting to see chinks in the armor and they're starting to say, "Wait a minute, this ain't about us just following you down the road, brother. This is about whether or not you actually did the right thing and whether or not it's going to actually help us or hurt us." The biggest fear that you hear from the biggest fear you hear
Dems are coming out. Senate Dems are coming out.
it's
And what
not
is their
Senate Dems.
argument?
It's a coalition of Republicans and Democrats. Let's make that clear at this point.
Let's talk. The coalition of 6 Republicans and Senate Dems. One of mine, who I love deeply, Senator Catherine Cortez Masto out of Nevada. What is she saying? The cost. What is going to be the cost of Venezuela, right? And you know what? These are good comments, but I wish she would say, "Great, we got an evil person away from a regime in our one of our should be allied countries. Great. Now, how do I come to the table? How do I work with this administration to make sure the costs are not ballooned to affect?"
And this is why you and I need to sit down and go over your algorithm, because I think that I've actually heard folks saying that in the last 48 hours. I've heard them say that there is we took out a very bad person, but now that we've taken him out, what's the consequence, right? And the biggest fear that I'm hearing from people like our friend Senator Mark Kelly in Arizona, who, former Air Force pilot, astronaut, the whole 9 yards, he's looking at it from a military perspective, and he's saying, I do not want us going into Venezuela because the jungles are filled with Contras still, and and they're also a landscape much like Afghanistan. I don't want us getting stuck down there in another 10-year war. And that is an important factor into all of this when we choose to use military action. Because if you believe in the Powell Doctrine, which is if you break it, you own it, right? Is what he told us when we went to Saudi Arabia, when we went to Iraq, when we went to Afghanistan. He was very clear in that point. You break it, you own it. So the president's going to have to deal with that. But to move on, because our good friend Eddie has patiently sat there with his rugged, masculine look, and he collectively wants to address his ideological twin, Mandani. So what do you got for us on Mandani now, Eddie?
Oh, I mean, what don't I got for us on Mandani? This is salute, Twilight Zone. It's the upside down. It is bizarre. Gotham City has turned into the People's Republic of, Mamdani and Communist Brotherhood. Like it is bizarre to me, Sisto. This guy gets up on stage with Comrade Sanders, right? Who can't even comb his hair for the freaking, photo op, and stands on the Quran, puts his hand on the Quran, right? Like this is another thing. Like you hear all these progressives screaming about, oh, no Bible, no Bible, no Bible. But not a single one of them are screaming about the fact that the mayor of New York has put his hand on the Quran for his swearing in. Now, personally, I don't have a problem with that, but I mean, this is the hypocrisy we see in the left all the time. But here he comes, and then in his speech, he's got his smug smile. I've been working on this for my Cactus Crossfire listeners. He's got his eyes, and he says, we are going to remove the rugged individualism with the warmth of collectivism. And he smiles and he smugs, right? And that's what he does. And I'm like, I cannot believe he literally is taking
what's your okay,
the Communist Manifesto. He is quoting the Communist Manifesto. It is a line in the Communist Manifesto. This is Karl Marx and Frederick Engels all over again.
Okay.
And you have the mayor of the biggest city in the country, maybe the world, I don't know the numbers, but in the country, quoting Comrade Marx and Comrade Engels with a hand on the Quran, a theocratic nation, talking about getting rid of the rugged individualism. And then what does he do? So let's say, maybe it was just talking points. Maybe he's just throwing red meat at his followers, these progressives that love it, right? Blah, blah, blah. No, he appoints Sia Weaver, right? The czar of housing, your good friend, 37-year-old Sia Weaver. And she's coming out and she's saying, we are going to get rid of private property rights in the city of New York. It's right there. He literally said it in his speech. Everyone got all warm, and now they're trying to strip private property rights. And it is truly not just talk, Sisto. This is terrifying. What
Well,
the hell is going on in New York
I mean,
City?
I'm happy to. I understand that this comes straight from the Communist Manifesto, but let me ask you this, Eddie: who wrote his speech? Did Mamdani write his speech? He
His
was a
wife? I don't know.
collaborator. He was a collaborator on his speech. Didn't write the speech. And this goes back to something that I've talked about through our entire podcast. The problem isn't the candidate. The problem isn't the elected official. It's us. It's the consultants that have gone and found these people that they can sing and dance and perform really well to the electorate. But we are having a very heck of a hard time getting people to actually govern, okay? To actually lead, to actually come through on these things. Now, the two terms, do I think that probably these guys should have taken a little extra time with their pens and run their ideology through ChatGPT and find out if anything like the Communist Manifesto pops up? Probably. They don't want to. You know why?
But they knew what they're doing, Sisto. And
Eddie,
listen,
I wish
I'm
I
not
could.
gonna
I wish I
fully
could.
agree
I
with
wish I
this
could
because
believe. I wish I could believe that the two guys.
100%.
When you look at the two guys who wrote this, and plus Zohan Mandani, who prior to any of this has never had a job. Okay, do I think that he's?
Why? Because
do I think that he is like my good friend Dr. Eddie Ablisser, who sat around in college and looked at political theory at a deeper level? Heck no. Heck no.
No way.
That's why we are the best at what we do in our country, because we got
That's
people like Eddie Ablisser with great hair and a rugged look. That's why we do what we do here in the West. But are these candidates, are these people on the far left and on the far right bringing the best and brightest to the table to have that conversation? And I will point this out to you because we were joking about it earlier in the show. You know, here's Eddie Ablisser, one of the biggest young progressive voices out of Arizona, and he's approached by one of the most Republican governors, Brian Sandoval, to come head up one of his departments, right? And why does that make Brian Sandoval a good leader? Yeah, that's right. Put your hands together. There they are. I'm right here with you. The collaboration.
Where's the Reading Rainbow? Like there's a Sesame Street thing,
and
you know,
and
the
what we
R's and D's, we get along,
and
we work together, Sisto.
and this is the thing, Eddie, you've got to learn the lexicon of both sides. The one thing that I have learned in being successful in dealing with both ends of the extremes is find the middle ground and work from the middle out. That's what you got to do. And
That's
I was
smart.
today I was talking with another not a government affairs, but another bureaucrat. And we've both been around the Capitol for a very long time. We're talking about Venezuela. We're talking about a number of other things that are happening in the upcoming 30-day legislative session in New Mexico. And he's like, I don't understand why these people can't see this or they can't see that. I said, because we're not running the show, brother. There's not enough Sistos. There's not enough Jeffs in the world to help manage the business of government, because nobody wants to be a government bureaucrat and make nothing to serve the greater good.
And that's true. I mean, listen,
And
those government employees, I'm super critical of them, but
Yeah.
they make nothing. They
Yeah.
really do.
and I mean, and here we have a woman that is about to take over the housing authority in New York that is making very ambitious claims in the first 30 days of this administration.
Didn't she just get questioned about her mom's home in Tennessee and start bursting out in tears or something like that?
Sure did.
Like in live television.
Sure did.
Reporters came up and they're like, did you see this?
Sure did. But guess what?
Yeah.
That should have been done by a political team that vetted this person before they put him on stage.
But Sisto, so let me ask, don't you think that Mamdani's political team, don't you think that he himself, this whole group, AOC, Bernie, they don't care? I don't think they care, man.
I think they care.
I don't think they care.
I think they care, but they don't care to be meticulous. They don't care to have, because they think that by doing your homework and doing the parts that you need to do is as important as saying whatever comes out of your mouth that's going to feed the fury of the people who elected you. Governing and running are two separate things. And until people start getting that through their head and start asking for people to actually how they're going to govern versus what they're going to say, we're going to continue to have Mondanis. We're going to continue to have Trumps. And it's also incumbent on guys like us who help elect these people to stop taking the cash and say, I'm going to vote, I'm going to back the guy who meets me where I'm at. And I'm going to, I would have loved to have been. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Sisto, it is political consultants. The other player in this game are the nonprofit political action groups, right? So nonprofit and / the political action groups, 501c3s and 4s, right? Those organizations that are out there promoting single issue, we talk about this all this time, the single issue concepts. And so from the left, these progressive political action groups are getting out, they're taking out their purity tests, right? They're saying you can't have any racism unless you're anti-Semitic, right? You're allowed to be anti-Semitic and be a progressive, apparently. You can't have any sort of private property rights now unless your mom owns a home in Tennessee for 1.4 million, right? Or look at Congresswoman Omar and the tremendous value that she's accumulated since immigrating and her dad's work in Somalia. The point I'm trying to say, Sisto, is the hypocrisy that comes from these groups. We've seen it time and time and time again, right? I remember many of these progressive groups getting out there. They all need to do what? One, raise money so that they all have a job and they make money, right? That's number one. Two, they have to feed the beast. They have to come up with these extraordinarily grand claims in a progressive environment to make the money so that they can support these candidates. Every single one of those people is around the table with Mayor Mandani, and they're the ones that also have to blame. Stop donating to progressive organizations, people.
Well, no.
Start donating to candidates that actually do what they say. That's where the money needs to go.
Well, but I think at the same time, Eddie, I don't think they need to stop giving to some of these organizations because some of these organizations do actually good work. But I think what they need to do is be saying, when I give you this money, I want it to go to the work. I don't want it to go to political action stuff. That's the big takeaway I have with 501c3s and 4s.
I agree.
I think that.
But I want to be clear. I'm not saying don't donate to some of these good nonprofits that are doing great
and that's why
things.
that's why I'm saying that when we're and they exist on both ends. They exist in both ends and both spectrums. It's just the fact of the matter is that the messaging that comes out of the liberal ones are much more heart-wrenching and much more connected to people on the street. The other guys, corporate 501c3s and 4s, get your junk together and start finding out what people really think about you versus what the narrative that your opponents on the other side are doing. And if you want to figure that out, our number is at the bottom. We're happy to help. So with that being said, Eddie, we're out of time, but we've got to get to our favorite segment of every episode. Tell me something spicy, something prickly, and something quickly. What do you got for me that's spicy, Eddie?
All right, spicy. Listen, U.S. Secretary of Treasury, Bassett, he came out, did a rough analysis, and he estimates that there's over 300 to 600 billion with a B dollars of fraud throughout federal and state government expenditures. I'm telling you, this is something that is in blue states and red states. This is something within Christian churches and Islam mosques, right? This is something across the board. Fraud is occurring. And I think that one thing we should walk away from as a community is let's not just sweep it under the rug. Let's hold people accountable. These are taxpayer dollars. We're in tremendous debt. We need to get a handle on the fraud that's happening. And I think that means more auditors, more investigators, more people looking at where these dollars are going. And I think that's a good thing. So that's my spicy take. Let's get a handle on the fraud.
What's your prickly?
My prickly take. All right, prickly. Prickly is a little something more personal, Sisto. I want to talk to you about like something that we all struggle with. Men and women at the stage that you and I get to. Right? Take off your hat, Sisto.
Why?
What's underneath there?
There's not much. Why do we
Not
and we all
much.
know that?
Look,
yeah.
But I'm saying, so I keep researching. Listen, science is a good thing. Men, women, your hair is falling out. Your hair is thinning. We need to handle what God gave us, but also recognize that there's sometimes scientific interventions. So like my hair, I think it's okay, but I want to check something out. So minoxidil. I'm going to give minoxidil a ride. I want to report. I want to use this podcast, my buddies who are listening in, and say, is it actually work? Right? Does it make your scalp itchy and red or whatever? Nothing wrong with that. I'm an old man. I'm becoming older by the minute. Let's take a look at some of these good prickly solutions to men's hair loss and hair thinning.
Okay. So you want me to get hair? Appreciate it. So you got that for prickly. What's you got for me quickly, brother?
All right, my quickly take. Legislatures are coming in all across the West, except for Nevada. We're on a break. But Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, India, Idaho, we're all coming in for session. And I want to pay very close attention in coming into these midterms, where many of these governors have their elections. Who is going to invest truly in education, right? I think that's my quickly take. I think it has to be everything, right? In the West, we see failure left and right in our education systems. We just talked about daycare. I want to see who is wanting and running, not just throwing money to teachers' unions, not just throwing money to vendors and privatization, but who is going into county, city, charter, public education and really investing for our children. That's where I want to see change in the West. That's my quickly take. Sisto, how about you? What's your spicy take?
My spicy take, I've already led you guys into it earlier. I think that the tankers that will be floating back from Venezuela are going to have a great impact on your cost of travel, but also I think it's going to have a greater impact on your cost of living. I think folks need to be very aware of economic impacts that oil and gas prices have in our country, and we need to start looking at oil and gas in a different way. We can't just demonize them as being hacker frackers as much as we would like to. I think that we need to start taking a different approach of looking at our energy industries and how they produce things. I encourage everybody to watch the Paramount show Landman, and you'll understand what I'm talking about.
All right. Tell me
something prickly.
Prickly.
So my prickly take is this. I'm going to be 50 years old this year. And I just recently found out that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are also going to be 50 years old. So this is my appeal to the Glazer family, to everybody down in Tampa. If you can get me a senior discount before my 50th birthday on tickets, I would appreciate it. That's my prickly take. And then something quickly. You're right, Eddie. We're headed into legislative sessions. We're gearing up here in New Mexico. I will tell you this much. New Mexico will yet again prove to be a leader in the business of creating efficient state budgets. So be watching out for New Mexico's legislature. Watch what our good friend Speaker Martinez does in this next 30-day session. And with that, we encourage everybody to hit the like button, subscribe, go to our website, cactuscrossfire.com. Check in on all of our socials and also comment below because we love hearing from you.
Yep.
Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.